Coming up today on Folks, we'll talk to the author of The Black Folks Guide to Making Big Money in America and several black businessmen about the state of black business in Louisiana. Also, Robin Hinton takes a look at the District 8 Congressional race on today's edition of Folks. Hello everyone, and welcome to Folks. We're taking a look at what's going on with black business today. We found that black business is in trouble. In 1980, the Census Bureau found that median black family income was only 61% of white median family income. Since 1980, things have gotten worse. Statistics show that black America is falling further behind. Despite a growing black middle class, fewer blacks are starting businesses of their own, and of those that do, many fail. We have been told that black businesses are poor, there's not a strong asset base to build on and operate with, that the managers of black businesses have little formal business training, and few connections in the public and private sectors that will stimulate business growth. All of this combined with the theory that blacks do not support black businesses adds up to the poor condition of black businesses today. The Xavier University Economic Development Center surveyed minority businesses in New Orleans and found that those things are true.
Unfortunately, the study sort of validated some things, some general impressions that most people already had, and that's that the minority businesses weren't a really large employer in this area. And that is unfortunate considering minorities comprise about 55% of the population here in New Orleans.
Two of the more primary results that we have to look at is one, the low volume of sales by minority firms, and two, the majority of those persons interviewed and for the study had little or no training in business, and we find that marketing techniques, sophisticated and in some cases low-cost, effective marketing strategies need to be developed to increase the sales.
I would say another important fact that came out of the study was that average number of employees for the firms were only about 9 employees per each business. And that also takes out some of the 3 largest employers that we surveyed. The 3 largest of the 146 provided almost half of the total employees in those companies. And I think that's significant when you consider also that several of the firms had no employees at all. They were run entirely by family members and managers.
The Xavier University study, which examined 146 black businesses in the New Orleans area, provided these disturbing facts. Though one firm had been in existence since 1918, the majority were established since 1970. Minority firms have little impact on employment in the New Orleans area. Only about half of the owners had worked in a related business. A number had worked as managers in unrelated businesses. Even fewer had owned another business. Only 17 businesses reported assets of over $500,000. Average sales were $280,000 in 1982, down from $290,000 in 1981. More than half of the firms reported sales of less than $100,000. George Subira, author of The Black Folks Guide to Making Big Money in America, has found that bad attitudes sometimes cause businesses to fail.
We have an attitude that we are a poor people. I mean, we're talking about $200 billion a year and we're still talking poverty. You know, we're talking 10th, 11th richest nation in the world and we're still pleading poverty. The reasons why so many people come into our business, come into our community to set up their businesses is because they know that we're not poor. They know that if they can corner our market, that they can become millionaires. So that's an anti-money consciousness kind of attitude. We also have an attitude that comes from the black church, that comes from religion, period, which suggests that, love of money, love of making money, is in itself kind of an evil, mischievous, anti-godly thing to be about doing. And there's a lot of phrases in the Bible which kind of support that kind of thinking.
Subira also feels that blacks don't develop the sales and promotion skills needed to attract more profit.
If you look at Ebony magazine, 40 years old last year, it is just as dependent on white corporation support in 1986 as it was in 1946, with the exception of the cosmetic industry, which is just one industry in a nation full of industries. The 350,000 black businesses do not advertise in Ebony. And it is the most widely read black document in the history of the planet Earth. It's not like they have to make a decision like white America of whether to advertise in Newsweek or Time or U.S. Today, News and World Report, People, Us. They have a trillion magazines and they have to select their market. We know that if we hit Ebony or Jet or Black or Essence, that we have our market covered. And yet we still don't do it. So the weakness in selling, promotion, marketing, all in one, because it's all kind of interrelated, I think is our weakest area. If we had a reputation as salespeople, we could get financing because people know that we could get rid of the product.
The North American Mortgage Corporation opened for business a few months ago. A loan brokering firm, they do not rely solely on black business.
The basic philosophy is that we're going to be a growth company. We feel that we have a product and a service that will interface with the community, and that if we have a support system, which we're in the process of building now, we feel that ultimately we'll be one of the financial giants in the community of Baton Rouge.
There was a problem in that there were a number of individuals that needed funds or needed to obtain loans but were unable to find financing in this particular area. And at the same time, we had contacts with funding institutions around the country, so we decided to try and bridge the gap between those that needed funds here with those that had excess or available funds in other places. So we sat down and thought, and we developed the concept of North American Mortgage in order to fill the gap.
The partners of North American Mortgage agree that promotion is the key to business success.
We feel that as a newly formed corporation, that if you do a job well, regardless of the plight of the economy, that we will be successful. So at this time, we are attempting to find our place in the market and do the best job possible to make this successful.
We have a lot of things in the works now. When I say things, I mean applications, and we're getting more every day. There's a lot more response to the business.
Tommy Cain has been in the financial management business for several years. He says that his business is not what it used to be. In 2 years' time, there has been an economic downturn.
The financial management consulting business, it depends on a lot of new businesses, okay? And it's not a lot of individuals starting new businesses now. And a lot of the business that are existing right now are going out of business, which mean that my services are not needed as much as it was in the past when new business were being started and the old business were having a good profit margin.
Cain says his dilemma is more than a black business problem. He has diversified his business in order to turn a profit. He feels the state must do the same.
I think it's going to take bring a new industry into the state of Louisiana. Now, what I mean by that, we got to get away from the petroleum industry. We're going to have to develop some other type of industry in this state and not be so dependent on the petroleum industry. And as far as specific businesses, I don't have any idea what that could be, but I think that we have to depend on our state leaders in order to bring new business into the state. Because the fact that the petroleum business it's just not what it used to be.
In view of this, where does the responsibility for black business success lie?
I know Tony Brown quotes a statement, and I don't really know where the data comes from, but it says in essence that of the disposable funds that blacks have to spend on things like cars and other luxury items, that we spend 5% of that with black companies. And other people, whites, Asians, etc., spend 100% of their disposable income supporting their companies. So that you have a white businessman who is getting 95% of the disposable income of blacks and 100% of the disposable income of whites and other minorities, which puts the black businessman only getting basically about 5 to 10%. We don't support our institutions, and I think that is the story we need to learn from this type of study.
So who is ultimately responsible for the success and failure of black businesses? Here to explore some answers to that question are my studio guests. Warren Burkett, president of Wybirk and Associates, a management consultant firm, and the Wybirk Business Development Center, and Joseph Dorsey, consultant to D&G Diversified Financial Services. Welcome to folks.
Thank you.
So Warren, you had some opinions on the piece that we just saw. Would you care to share them with us, please?
Well, a couple of things that strikes me on that is, one, we were talking about employment. Approximately 85 to 90% of the businesses in the country employ less than 25 employees. And the small business sector, and there's really a very vague, gray definition of what small business is in this country. But the true small businesses in the country, they in turn have in the last few years been the ultimate employers of the average individual, whereas they've created more new jobs than the Fortune 500 companies have.
So do you think that it's actually the black people in the community that are failing to support our black businesses?
That is true. One of the things, though, you also got to recognize is that we talk about retail more than anything else when we talk about the black community or community-based businesses. Blacks now are starting to get into non-traditional businesses. We've got 3 automobile business dealerships in the state of Louisiana now. We've got people who are getting into light manufacturing and high-tech industry. These are areas that were closed to us previously. The only thing that we had going as far as business was concerned is to go out and try and sell cigarettes, beer, liquor, whatever the case may be, maybe gasoline, repair services. The economy has changed tremendously nationally. The business compositions have changed nationally as well as locally to service-oriented businesses that are color blind, so to speak, that are not necessarily community-based businesses. We may be doing services here in this area for companies in Tacoma, Washington, or Washington, D.C., to the federal government, or whatever the case may be. We're away from manufacturing, and when I say we, I'm talking about businesses in general. Minorities have not been in the manufacturing sector because it's high capitalization to get into it. But with the shift to service sector, which is low capitalization, more and more businesses are being run by minority individuals in those areas.
Okay, you're saying minority businesses, but when we set out to do this piece, we discovered that it wasn't the minority businesses at large that were having the biggest problems, because Asian businesses are surpassing everyone, whites included, in terms of gain over a period of time, but black businesses. So the question here is, whose responsibility is it?
All right, now you get two sectors of what is a black business. Black by skin or black by Native American. Those blacks who come to this country from outside of say, Haitians, Jamaicans, Africans who start businesses traditionally do much better than Native American blacks and do much better than Native whites.
Well, then I would definitely say Native Americans. What's causing the problem?
Well, it's back to what you said before and what was mentioned previously in the article, is the fact that the community-based businesses are not getting the support from the minority community. I mean, when integration came in, we left the community, as was pointed out in one of the articles that was referenced. But as I said also, we're also going into now those businesses that are not community-based businesses. And that's where we're going to still need some major support. You know, we've got to go to non-traditional businesses as well as we would go to the community businesses. We've got to support the person who has a business that's selling cars or selling TVs or whatever the case may be, as well as support those businesses that are in advertising and marketing, et cetera.
Joseph, you have some very strong opinions on the subject. Would you share those with us, please?
I'd love to. First of all, I think the answer possibly may lie in the black community itself. I think that three major groups, parents, teachers, and preachers, are going to be the ones that are going to have to get the word out to the people and take that leadership role that they're to have in leading black businesses to where they should be. I think another thing would be the resurgence. There has to be a reawareness of the black businesses in the community in terms of supporting them. Not going to the big shopping centers, spending their money there, but developing black businesses, shopping malls in black communities. This is something that has not happened here in the Baton Rouge area in particular, let alone across the state of Louisiana. And until we start developing in our own communities as blacks, then I think we will lose quite a bit of money out of those areas.
So would that involve moving back into the black communities, those of us who've moved away?
Not necessarily. I think that those people who have monies to invest should invest into black areas, in particular the North Baton Rouge area, where you have one of the largest universities black in the country. There's quite a bit of money there, and I think with major developments there in terms of shopping centers and malls, and also franchises, whether it be McDonald's or Burger King, I think that we can redevelop these areas and take blacks further in terms of economic development.
Were either of you surprised that in the New Orleans study they found that the black businesses actually had little or no impact on employment in the community at large?
Yes, I was quite surprised at that, Sonya. I had the opportunity to do research and development at the Minority Business Development Center in New Orleans, setting up a system of networking between minority businesses in general for a 5-parish region area. And there were quite astonishing results that I found in the surveys I took down there in relations to what you're speaking of right now. And I think, again, even in your larger cities, blacks, the leaders of the cities and the communities will have to start redeveloping the black community in terms of investing in businesses in the black community to ensure employment opportunities for other blacks.
I think that the thing about the support or lack of support from the black community for black businesses really has to transcend the community itself, as Joe said. The support that's needed comes from the areas of financial support, comes from the areas of cooperation and joint venturing or subbing to or from other businesses that can help the minority business or the black business. And I use minority quite a bit, as you see. But that support of putting finances together to help a business get going. Now, it may not be a community-based business, but it's a business owned by a black individual or a group of black individuals. Supporting the financial institutions, be they banks or thrifts, by depositing the money into those institutions. I mean, they give us the same services as we go to any of the white institutions, financial institutions. Going to the minority mortgage companies. Right? We have to take the economic power that we have and make that economic power something that's cohesive for businesses, to start businesses, to expand businesses, not just necessarily the retail businesses in the community, but black businesses throughout the city itself or throughout the state. And that's where I think the economic power can come from, because we don't have the access to capital. We need venture capital. Be you white, other minority, also or black, venture capital is very difficult. If you're black, it's extremely difficult. Even in insurance, I mean, we have lots of insurance companies in this state that are black-owned and have been in business for years, but they only deal in life insurance. We need to get into casualty insurance more. We need to get into the surety business of providing bonds for construction companies and other service companies. This is where I think the black economic dollars can come into play in pooling at sources for venture capital and expansion capital.
I find it difficult to believe that it's just that black businesses aren't being supported by the black community. I think that perhaps there are some other sociological reasons. Do either of you agree with that? That maybe there's some deeper reasons for the failure of our business?
Sure there are, because the nature of black-owned businesses has really just changed in the last 15 to 20 years. We're able to go out into the mainstream of business now. Consequently, without the training from previous generations, if you had and I had the liberty of, I should say the luxury of sitting down at the dinner table or the breakfast table and talking about business, or listen to our parents talk about business, or our parents and their associates talking about business, as opposed to jobs or lack of jobs or whatever, or other problems in the community, then we would have developed that sense. If our families had something to pass to us from the previous generations, other than you need to go get an education so you can get a good job, meaning we have to go work for somebody else. We're at the point that even when we go into business now, we don't have the support group that's across the black community. I mean, we're isolated when we go into the business,
Well,
we're
what
isolated
about,
from financial institutions.
What
we don't
about
have
the
that
state?
exposure.
Where does the state fit into all of this? I'm sure that the state government has some responsibility to the black community. Joseph, would you care to comment on that?
In terms of state government, there was a 10% set-aside program available to minority businesses, whether it be black or whatever nationality. But I think that this is not the answer, the 10% set-aside. I think that you have to, again, go back and get the awareness from your ministers in the churches, letting the congregation know that black businesses need their support.
What about public figures, public officers?
I think, once again, in addressing that, I think that the leadership that we have now in terms of public officials should take the lead and should come forward and work with business people, people who are potential business people, people who are in business right now, to help them. And this is something that they have not done, that they should do to help black businesses make it.
Thank you very much for appearing on our show, and the best of luck to both of you in your businesses in the future.
Pleasure to be here.
We've been talking to Warren Burkett and Joseph Dorsey about the problems that black businesses are facing. Now here's Robin Hinton with another Folks Flashback.
Everybody's just folks.
This week's Folks Flashback takes us to the year 1982. Folks went to the state prison at Angola to talk with prize-winning prison journalist Wilbert Rito.
We tried to give you a realistic view of what prison is like, because everything in prison is not violence. Everything in prison is not death. Everything in prison is not necessarily bad or necessarily good. It's like life anyplace else, is mixed.
Tuesday is Election Day, and there is one race here in Louisiana that is receiving a lot of attention. I'm not talking about the Senate race, but the Congressional contest in District 8, a contest that pits Democrat Faye Williams of Alexandria against Republican Clyde Holloway of Forest Hills, a contest that pits female against male, liberal against conservative, and black against white. Although both candidates say race is not an issue.
Louisiana. I've been hearing from all over the country that race will be an issue in this campaign. But let me just say that I believe the people of the state of Louisiana have suffered enough, and I feel much more positive about the people of Louisiana and believe they're more concerned about who is best qualified to represent them and to resolve their problems.
We don't have to make race an issue. There is nothing about this race between Faye and I that should make race an issue. It's a black woman running against a white man. That's as far as it should be. It's two American citizens running for a congressional seat.
But race is definitely a factor. District 8 is approximately 65% white, 35% black. Williams was able to mobilize the black vote for the primary, but she realizes it's going to take a great deal of white support to make her the victor Tuesday night.
We were told that in order to win the race, we would need approximately 15 to 20% of the white vote. And we've done 2 polls, and each of the polls has shown that I'm receiving in excess of that amount. And I believe the poll we just completed, which should be out sometime this week, will show that I'm getting at least 24% of the white vote.
This is Holloway's 3rd try to win a seat in Congress. He is a strong Reagan supporter and was heavily involved in the 1980 fight against court-ordered busing in Forest Hill. It is because of his battle against busing that some people have labeled him a racist.
I've had to live 6 years of people calling me a racist. I fought busing, and I'm proud to stand here today and tell you I fought busing because I believe it's one of the evils of our country. We had the blacks in our community 100% united behind us in our battle. We have never fought for segregation. We were not a segregated school. We never intend to be a segregated school. And since I have formed a private school, we have had black students as well as black teachers in the private school. So to say that I have ever had anything to do with segregation, I have never had one thing to do with segregation.
Both candidates see themselves as the better choice for District 8.
Well, that's all for today's show. Be sure to join us next week when we explore the pros and cons of group homes for the mentally retarded in your neighborhood. Until then, bye-bye.